There's lots to talk about this morning, a variety of headlines. Before we get to what might be in the Chancellor's spending review a bit later this morning or later today, what about this front page of the Telegraph saying that the law is going to be abolished that currently bans rough sleeping, or vagrancy as it used to be called. Angela Rayner has said that that's going to change. He's going to drop that law and it will no longer be illegal to sleep on the streets. What does that mean, do we think, in real terms?
Well, it was branded shameless by many charities over a long period of time. If you're homeless, that shouldn't be a crime. There'll still be laws to move you on if you sleep on somebody's front lawn or whatever. Yeah. But I think this act was just widely condemned right across the political spectrum, including by some Conservatives. But it won't in itself solve the problem of homelessness. If people are sleeping rough and they've got nowhere to stay, why is that? Either they haven't got any accommodation or they've got problems. Back in the day, I worked in a hostel for homeless men when I was in York, and you found out there were lots of different reasons why people were homeless. But fundamentally, it's not having a property. And this is where you can tie it into the house building programme that Angela Rayner's going to unveil.
And millions into trying to prevent homelessness. But
absolutely.
I know that not many people are actually prosecuted under this Act. I just wonder whether this gives a signal to other people, maybe not even homeless people, who think, OK, well, we can set up camp. Or whether this is something that, for instance, other parties might politicise in that way.
Well, of course, nobody wants to throw the law book at people who are genuinely homeless and they've often got mental health issues. But is this going to mean we're going to have even more small communities springing up in our towns and cities?
Most cities have one, don't they?
They do.
In London, it's Park Lane.
Park Lane, a very prominent, prestigious street. It's a showcase of people coming into London. Yeah. And I think they're genuinely shocked to see camping, almost tent sites in the middle of... And these are spreading. And I think the worry about this law is they'll spread even more. There's one near where I go to on GB News. It's on a roundabout. You get quite a lot of tents. I've talked to them. They're migrants. They admit they're not even meant to be here. They don't have jobs. They look like bonfires.
Oh, you're saying they're illegal migrants?
Yeah, they admit it. And they're
what, you said out, are you an illegal migrant now?
And they said, we can't tell you, we're not meant to be here.
OK.
And so I assumed from that. And then every now and again, they're moved on, they're back. Now...
They can't be moved on.
They put high fencing there to prevent... Let's see if that's something... But under this law...
They won't be moved on.
Hang on, but they're not. So the Vagrancy Act is ineffective there because this act is in place and they are there. So it's not applying to.
Well, he said that Andrew might make the point that more people will do the same thing. That currently that the powers of the law are limited or not enforced. But if you repeal the Act altogether, then it means that other groups do the same thing.
This fence that's gone up to stop them getting in under Rayner's law will be taken down because it won't be illegal to camp there anymore.
The Act where it's used is people sleeping in shop doorways and they don't have anywhere else to go. You move them on, they'll go to another shop doorway. That's the Act's anything.
I have seen the law applied, actually, in a case like that, and close to where I live. There's what used to be a bank and quite a broad shop doorway there, and there are several people who sleep there rough. And about 6 months ago, somebody moved in there to sleep, and I don't think they were very well, emotionally, mentally, and they became quite abusive to passers-by. That person was moved on by the police. They did have the powers to move them on, so it does happen.
But you have powers to move people on if they're abusive without going to the Vagrancy Act.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's kind of seen as something... It's criminalising homelessness. It's from the Victorian era. It's seen as completely outdated and offensive. But if somebody's abusive to you, they can be tackled by the police because they're being abusive, because they're a public nuisance, and there'll be a public order breach.
Interesting. Telegraph points out that in the reign of Joe Biden, the Democrats, not Donald Trump, last year the Supreme Court enabled, because this is a huge problem in San Francisco, enabled the authorities to move these people on and to break up these camps, because they've got a massive problem in cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles with people living in the streets.
You'd still be able to do that here.
And a lot of them are smoking this terrible, awful weed, which is very bad and stinks.
Right. Well, we'll see what happens with that. In the meantime, the Chancellor apparently is going to announce almost $40 billion for affordable homes. Now, we're going to find out in the next couple of hours exactly what is in her spending review. Up until this point, we have heard all the departments have been trying very hard to lobby for extra money, and we anticipate lots and lots of cuts, particularly in the Home Office. We understood that the Home Secretary, Louisa James, was saying that the government had to deny the Home Secretary was on resignation watch because she hadn't got all the money that she wanted. So, Kevin, from your understanding, is this a cutting spending review or is this a splurging spending review?
It's both, isn't it? What the Chancellor is doing is playing Santa now, and then we'll see where the Scrooge comes out when we get the figures later today. Because not everybody is going to win. So she's pinpointing cash on defence. I think that's a waste. Shouldn't be doing that. We're spending enough already. On housing, on the NHS, which will be the big winner. The NHS takes about around 4 in every £10 spent by the government goes into the health service. But this is going to get these areas, including housing. But I want to see the exact figures on how many new affordable homes are going to be, what the definition of affordable homes is, because under the Conservatives they weren't affordable if you lived in expensive areas, because they're linked to average rents. And the fundamental problem is, in the early 80s, we had more than 5 million council houses. Now there's fewer than 2 million council houses after the selling off. So you've got to wait for the details. And I am worried if you spend more on police, but you cut the courts system, the justice system, and we're not going to get any further forward, because reforms can improve public services, undoubtedly, harnessing technology, just making them more efficient and better. But at the same time, you need resources.
You talked about defence, but NATO yesterday said that they expect countries like ours to step up to the plate and spend 5%.
Or the Secretary-General said if we don't, we'll have to start learning to speak Russian.
Yes.
That was a pretty stark warning.
Yeah, it's an
amazing thing to say.
It's bonkers warning.
But nevertheless...
bonkers,
and, of course, we're only getting up to 2.7% by 2027, a vague commitment that we might get to 3% by 2034. Well, the enemy won't hang around that long.
How much of what she's going to be saying today is to do with turning things around in terms of her political reputation?
I think her political reputation is almost terminal, because the row over Winterfell has been so debilitating. She was so tin-eared in the first place. It's taken far too long to get to grips with it. It was a panicked U-turn, announced by the Prime Minister, by the way, not her. Do
you think she's in the last chance saloon?
I think reputations are easily lost, hard won to get them back. I wouldn't say she's in the last chance saloon, but she's got an uphill personal problem now. But the government has to have a programme to improve people's lives. It has to show how it is improving people's lives, how your life, your family's life, your neighbours' lives, the people in your neighbourhood, the community, in your town, in your city, in your rural area, and the country. And Labour got in, and it blew it all away.
And we
just didn't have a vision.
Unemployment yesterday,
up. I was just going to say, grim figures showing the unemployment rate hitting its highest level for nearly 4 years. The rate of unemployment jumped to 4.6% in the 3 months to April. I mean, if you're not employing more people...
And this idea, you see, it gives the lie again. This fiction, though, wheeling out about why we were able to fix the winter fuel allowance because we fixed the foundations of the economy. They haven't. It's getting worse, and borrowing is getting higher, and the unemployment figures are going up sharply. And I think those figures are going to get worse as the full impact of the national insurance rise kicks in. We've only had a couple of months of that.
From memory, it's projected to fall, actually, next year. There's undoubtedly there's a little peak and then it comes down. But, of course, growth was higher at the beginning of the year than was anticipated. Was it significantly higher? No, it's still sluggish. I think winter fuel, just go back 3 weeks into a new government, it was a huge error. It was a huge...
She won't be explaining today where she's going to get the money.
No, that will be in the budget.
That'll be in the budget.
Yeah, but she'll have to give some explanation.
You think she'll make a nod to it?
Yeah, because the infrastructure, the big investment, whether it's in roads or housing, that will be borrowing.
Right.
And that's... We all do it. If you have to borrow and go into debt to pay for your weekly shopping, that's bad. But if you're buying a new house or big home improvements and you take out a loan, that's sensible, and a lot of people do it. So she can justify the big increase in transport and housing on borrowing, because it'll happen over a period of time. The benefits will be long term. She can do that, but it's the day-to-day borrowing. When that goes up, there's something wrong.
And this Home Secretary, who was the very last one to settle, she didn't settle until Monday morning.
No,
and it was imposed on her by the Chancellor. Now, Brown and Blair, when they were in power, they were all powerful. They imposed on everybody. Here's what you're getting. Yeah. But because the Prime Minister and the Chancellor's authority has been weakened by, yes, in my view, Winterthur and rows over their appalling poll ratings, that's why this has been such a bitter bust-up.
It always
Lots of slam doors.
It always goes to the wire. Well, if you're a good minister, you're a tough negotiator.
And the Home Secretary did not get, apparently, all that she wanted.
Yvette Cooper is an experienced veteran minister. She used to be a Treasury minister.
She was
used to be working pensions secretary. She knows how to negotiate, which is why it sounds like she's got money for the police.
Yeah, she's got... police will get an above-inflation pay rise, but Yvette Cooper is unhappy with the final settlement report, say, amid concerns it is not enough to meet the government's pledge to recruit 13,000 neighbourhood officers by 2029, a manifesto pledge.
Manifesto pledge.
And, of course, what do people want? They want to feel safer, and they feel safer if they see more police officers in their neighbourhoods.
But that 13,000, I've criticised the figure in the past, because it's not just full-time police officers, specials. It is PSOs and specials, part-time cops. I suspect the number of part-time cops will go up, and the number of full-timers, which I think is really the key figure, will come down as a proportion.
We've had so many dire warnings, haven't we, from people from representatives of the police, chief constables...
Yeah. Quite extraordinary the way they fought their campaign.
I mean, very big organisations, yes.
Waging it in public with letters to newspapers, the Times in particular, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner going out warning, if you don't have the money, we will not be able to we'll have to make choices on what crimes we solve. That really makes people worried. And it's a sign that the pay rise will help, but it's not going to be enough in other areas.
I think it's really healthy you have this debate. Yeah. And people who... The head of the Met around the country, your police chief says, well, I can do this and I can't do that unless I get the money. Rather than just politicians saying, oh, we've sorted it.
I completely agree.
I think it's much better.
Susanna and I are going to be talking to the former presenter of Most Haunted, the Ghostbuster, Dr. David Ball, not about his television career and his next opportunity on TV or on radio, but because he's the new chairman this morning, it starts today, of Reform. And he's got strong views on the return of the death penalty. He's got strong views on banning the burqa in this country. What kind of difference do you think he might make?
He thinks the burqa is an anti-British symbol. Yeah. He's clashed with Farage before, when Mr Farage talked about we shouldn't allow HIV people... I think it was gay men with HIV should not be allowed into the country. He clashed with him over that, pointing out that it's not only gay people get HIV. David Ball is openly gay. He supports the death penalty. So there's going to be lively disagreements between him and Farage.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because this whole debate around the death penalty sort of suddenly reared its head again. Nigel Farage had talked about it, said nothing on the death penalty will be part of Reform Party policy. Personally, I don't think I could ever support it. But he did say that he thought that this is now a debate that's going to be reignited, because apparently a lot of younger people support reintroducing the death penalty.
He kind of wants it both ways. He wants the debate, and he wants some people in Reform to be leading that debate, so that the people who support the death penalty will then think, ooh, Reform's the party for me, despite they won't get what they want if Reform was ever in power. Well, but David Ball's role is to be a front-of-house man, not to fall out with anybody. That's always been his skill. But he's a dyed-in-the-wool politician. Let's not just make it as if he's appeared from nowhere. He was on David Cameron's A-list to try and become a Tory MP at one point. Then he was an MEP for the Brexit Party. He was the deputy leader of Reform, Richard Tice, for several years. So he comes in nice and smoothie. I'm just the man off the telly, you know. Let's get a bit of the old Roger Melly bit. But in fact, he's quite a hardline politician.
Well, we'll ask him about it, because at this poll by the think tank More in Common back in January found nearly 8 in 10 of Reform's backers support the death penalty for certain crimes.
That's why they're talking it up, despite the fact they wouldn't bring it back.
It's not just in reform. I mean, the majority of opinion in this country, I think it's about 52-53%,
sure that's right.
would support the return of the death penalty. The reason that Farage is against it...
Is that the case, Richard?
Pardon?
Is that the case? I mean, it
might
be in...
I read that 2 days ago. We can double-check that.
Yeah, sorry, because
I'll
I just
look it up right now.
It might be for certain cases, because if there's been a horrific murder...
oh, well, of course, it's always driven by that.
Yeah, or you say for terrorism or child killers...
The reason Farage is against it is the very valid and the very rooted argument that you have miscarriages of justice. And you can let people out of prison if you realise you've made a mistake,
and
that you can't bring them back from the dead.
It's a very compelling reason you can't do it.
Yeah.
The fact you could get the wrong person.
It's actually
Overall, it's 40% support, 50% opposed.
Interesting.
But you're right,
so actually, if you held a referendum on it today, if only 40% support... then you wouldn't get it back in.
You get a spike in support when you get the horrors of the Southport killings.
But you're right,
like that.
the higher
It's
figure of
so
over 50%
abhorrent.
is to do with extreme crimes of violence.
Yeah, limited, but it's judicial execution. It's cold-blooded murder by the state. We must all, I do, I'll have an emotional spasm sometimes when I hear about a terrible crime, and I think, if that person died, I wouldn't care. They deserve it. But it'd be wrong, just in principle, to introduce a system of judicial execution.
Would you support it, Andrew?
No, because of the you can get it wrong, and we've seen people coming out of prison recently who've been in far too long, and you never give that. They can never get their lives back, but to have lost their lives. I mean,
there was the famous Timothy Evans case, wasn't there, who was hanged wrongly.
But there are some killings are so shocking. I think, what's the point?
From the two issues for me are the miscarriages of justice. I don't support the death penalty anyway, but miscarriages of justice. But the second, from my reporting over in America and being in prisons where death penalty prisoners are being held, they are often held for decades. And there are appeals after appeals after appeals. So the death penalty, in my experience, is not something that is given as a sentence and then carried out. It is often just not carried out at all. They wait for, and it's very important that people have those legal processes in order to protect their rights.
It probably needs even more money spent on this ghastly, terrible killer in terms of legal terms and solitary confinement. So what's the point in the end?
It becomes a very expensive case because of the conditions that they're held in.
But it's interesting. So Farage doesn't support getting rid of the burqa. The new chairman doesn't support the death penalty, the new chairman does. So these are debates they want out there.
But as you say, Kim, it's very interesting. They are having the debate for a reason.
They are.
So normally, if you're not going to have it as policy, you would say, no, we're ruling that out, and that's the end of it. But Nigel Farage says, we're ruling it out as policy, but we'll have the debate. So is he suggesting that if they have the debate, they'll look at where the debate's going and then perhaps they would incorporate it into policy?
No, because he's a dictator in that party, isn't he? I mean, it's his way or no way, his way or the byway. No, but what he wants to do...
So what is the idea? Is it just to make sure that people are listened to and then you just repeatedly rule it out?
I think it's more cynical than listening to people. I think it's... He knows there is a section of the country, I think 40% was the figure just going up there, and he thinks, right, they want the death penalty, so I'm going to attract them. Right. That's what he does. I want to stir people up with a burqa debate, despite the fact I wouldn't ban it.
Well, it's banned.
That's what it's all about.
And in lots of countries in Europe, and I could easily see reform going into the election, changing its position on the burqa.
Well, 30p Lee Anderson, he says he supports the death penalty in certain circumstances.
Do we think that new fathers should get 6 weeks paternity leave? That's up for debate as well at the moment, the whole question of paternity leave as opposed to maternity leave.
Yeah, 1,000 dads and families are going to join a dad strike today, picketing outside the Department for Business. Just 3% of money spent on parental leave in the UK supports dads, and we have the worst paternity leave in Europe. Lots of dads who presumably going to take part in this dad strike say they want time to bond with their babies. Lots of businesses would say it's a huge cost. We've just had an increase in national insurance for employers. We've just had the minimum wage going up.
Because this is going to be in addition to mum having maternity leave.
Yes. Absolutely.
Hugely expensive for a small business, for God's sake.
It's, I think, is it 2 weeks now in law for new dad's paternity leave? But then there's all sorts of proposals of swapping, having an overall allowance, then who takes it?
Because swap it
because
between the two?
It's not the case every now that it's the mother that stays at home, although the physical exertion. God, I don't sound like I'm trying to mansplain any of this, but having been a dad 3 times, it's a huge toll on the woman giving actual birth, which isn't on the bloke. Look, I'd love it to be longer, but I can see why it isn't.
Well, a lot of small businesses are saying it would put them out of business.
It would cripple them.
Bigger firms might have better policies. Some will have better policies for leave, but big firms can absorb absences in a way a small business
people running a small business
can't.
Watching this now, holding their head in their hands, thinking, "Oh my God, it's difficult enough to keep the show on the road already without this."
But I can see why this debate is being held, because we do have work.
In the UK,
if other countries cope with bigger terms, why can't we cope with bigger terms?
In the UK, it's up to 2 weeks off work, and in Spain, it is 16 weeks off work at full pay.
There we are. Because, of course, unpaid...
That's generous,
many people can't cope with unpaid leave. You need to be paid, because Spain has got a falling birth rate, but we have in this country now. We're relying on migration to keep the population up, and the people who'll do the work in future generations are more likely to have been born abroad than they are now.
Well, we're asking you watching what you think about this. Do you think should taxpayers foot the bill for paternity leave? Let us know. We'll give you the result at the end of the show. Getting responses already, though. Jill on email says, why, as a taxpayer, should I help pay for men to take paternity leave? 40 years ago, there was no such thing. My husband took annual leave. It was simple. And Carl says, I'm self-employed. I had to go back to work the very next day my wife and baby came home. As usual, there's no help for us for anything. I just had to get on with it.
But he's right.
That's right.
With respect, I think the woman is stuck in the past. But he's right. If you're self-employed, there are very few rights and support for you. I think it's kind of a scandal, because the number of self-employed people in the country has grown massively.
You're a plumber with a plumber's mate, and your plumber's mate then going to get 6 weeks or 16 weeks paid paternity leave. It's going to cripple the small business industry.
And finally, before we let you go, do you think we need a minister in the government for play? I like this idea because it's for children. Basically, this is a report, Everything to Play For, a plan to ensure every child can play. Too many children are stuck in their rooms, doom scrolling, or playing video games, or watching other people play video games.
Hello, Mum and Dad. That's your job.
Are they the ministers for play?
Granny and Grandma. That's your job. What's a minister going to do from the government?
They
knock on the door and
say no ball games here.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's a complete nanny state nonsense.
What?
Minister for play.
Encouraging play or stopping play?
No, it's
both.
Exactly.
Children's independence to play outside has shrunk dramatically over the last 30 years, causing their health and happiness to deteriorate.
And parents are going to not want a minister knocking on the door saying, how long has your kid been upstairs?
I don't think
How many hours playing has your child done today?
Proposal.
Well,
I think
absurd.
The proposal will be in areas to have places where people can play. It's like the decline in youth services, youth clubs, has been horrendous on the terms of your kids hang around on street corners getting gangs or whatever.
It sounds like more meddling and interfering.
It's not.
Yes, it is.
Or it's supporting parents.
Parents do the job. No, or more parents
in the face of big tech, which is grabbing all our children's brains with their addictive phones.
You'd have been shouting at Mary Poppins. Let those kids do their own.
I love Mary Poppins.
Nanny state Mary Poppins.